Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Okay, so, yes, I sat down to do my lesson last night, and Trump got shot, and I was like, well, I need to watch the news. So, being a news junkie, having, going through this, by the time, it's like, well, I need to start doing this lesson now. So, let's see. But, you remember where you were when Reagan was shot? I remember I was walking in a 6th period band. And I came in and I made a joke, and everybody just turned around and said, "Shut up!" And I'm like, what happened? And our band director, Mr. Waters, had the radio on, and we just sat there all day and listened to it. Regardless of your political affiliations and something like this is shocking to any of us in our country and like. I just want to remind you of one thing. And I take this, I'm just going to read it, but it's far better written. I just took this from a line from Chariots of Fire, where Eric Liddell is preaching a sermon. And again, this was during a time of great uncertainty in Europe. World War I had just finished. They're staring at what looks like the beginnings of World War II. And he reminded the people of this: surely the nations are like a drop in the bucket. They are regarded as dust in the scales. God weighs the islands as though they were fine dust, and before him all the nations are as nothing. They are regarded by him as worthless and less than nothing. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Have you not understood? Since the earth was founded, he sits enthroned upon the circle of the earth. He brings princes to naught and reduces the rulers of this world to nothing. Surely the nations are like a drop in a bucket. They are regarded as dust on the scales, and he weighs the islands as though they were fine dust. And before him all the nations are as nothing. They are regarded as worthless and less than nothing. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary. In his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Regardless of what our country faces in the coming days and months, regardless of your own political persuasion and just remember this. In the end, it is nothing. God is still in control, and God will bring his will to us. And that should comfort us as Christians. All right. But that doesn't mean it's not okay to feel bad. Now, you have heard me teach long enough to know I am an eternal optimist. But that doesn't mean you can't feel bad. So I need to ask you something. When was the last time you felt really bad? What was that? Yesterday? Oh, okay. This morning? Okay. All right. Well, I'm not talking about arthritis, all right? When we're getting up and ow, I pulled something this morning. It's but I'm talking about emotionally. You felt really bad. And it may have been this morning, I don't know, but it's just. When you were depressed, and I don't mean down. I directed the PhD program for several years, and I told the incoming PhD students, you will get depressed. During this program, if it was easy, everybody would have one. I said, but you will get depressed. And all I ask is that when you get depressed, before you quit, before you leave, just contact me, contact another professor, and we will take you to lunch and tell you our depression story. Okay? And when we were quitting and But I also told the students this. Keep an eye on each other. Depression's real, it's normal. If it goes a week or 2 weeks, that's fine. But if it goes beyond 2 weeks, let me or someone know. Because now the brain's rewiring itself, and now we got a problem. Okay? So when's the last time you were depressed? Anxious. Maybe anxious enough to have an anxiety attack. And feel like, good grief, what is happening? I can't breathe. Despairing. You're facing an untreatable illness. You've been backstabbed at work. You've been sued for something didn't do. Someone in your family is facing something and you don't have the resources to help the way you'd like to. When's the last time you were despairing? When's the last time you were suicidal? I bring all this up because this is not normally stuff we talk about in church. But the Bible talks about it, so why shouldn't we? Okay? And what I want to get across first and foremost to you today is that it's okay to feel this way. Now, we have sermons, we have verses we look at, and when Christ says, do not worry, and that is a command, and we'll go through those. But the Bible's also real to say it's okay to feel this way as well. And this is how Lamentations works. Because we're going to see this. There's two different voices in Lamentations. There's like a speaker and a narrator. It's sort of like Song of Solomon, except not that happy. Okay? We're not talking sex here, okay? We're talking despair, all right? One of the voices is the voice of the narrator, and one is the woman who represents Judah. And she is despairing. Why? Because Judah has just been wasted, destroyed. Something that none of us in this room has experienced. We're talking about a level of destruction that hasn't been seen since World War II, when cities just laid waste. People taken and hauled off to other countries. People slaughtered in the streets. Lamentations 1, with opening voice, is the narrator's voice. You have an observer who's just looking out over the destruction of Jerusalem. The city is destroyed. The people are scattered. Everything is in ruins. Okay? I just got through bringing a student group back from Europe, and one of the things we talked about the fact is why from the 1950s on did European countries tend to go more socialist before they sort of adapted to that and said, oh, this doesn't really work? Well, think about it. If you in your own lifetime had watched everything that you, your families, your entire civilization had built, totally destroyed twice, World War I, then World War II, wasted, then wouldn't you be willing to sacrifice things like political freedoms and like just for some stability? So it's sort of natural to feel that way. Or why did the Chinese go communist? When you're starving to death, political freedoms don't really matter to you. You just want to eat the next day. And so the Jewish people are staring at this. And Lamentation starts with this. How deserted lies the city, once so full of people. How like a widow is she who wants to be great among the nation. She who was a queen among the provinces has now become a slave. Bitterly she weeps at night. Tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers there is none to comfort her. All her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. After affliction and harsh labor, Judah has gone into exile. She dwells among the nations. She finds no resting place. And all who pursue her have overtaken her in the midst of her distress. Now, a couple things there. He's just laying this out. You will notice one of the things he says, all her lovers are gone. That we're going to get back to. There's a reason for this destruction. A few verses later, towards the end of verse 9, the voice changes. Now we're listening to the voice of the woman. And she despairs. And she cries out, look, O Lord, on my affliction, for the enemy has triumphed. The enemy laid hands on all her treasures. Then she sighs, and we're back to the narrator's voice again. At the end of verse 11, she says, look, O Lord, and consider, I am despised. And then in chapter 2, her voice becomes really prevalent while she laments. She's despairing. Look, O Lord, and consider, whom have you ever treated like this? Should women eat their own offspring? Children they have cared for. Should priest and prophet be killed in the sanctuary of the Lord? Young and old lie together in the dust of the street. My young men and maidens have fallen by the sword. You've slain them in the day of your anger. You have slaughtered them without pity. As you summoned to a feast day, so you summoned against me terrors on every side. In the day of the Lord's anger, no one escaped or survived. Those I cared for and reared, my enemy has destroyed. Now right there, some things can come up. She's sitting there lamenting, going, how you did this to me. Why? And we'll get to that in a minute. But there's also something that usually comes up with people when they view verses like this. How could God be so mean? How could God do this? Well, let me ask you something as a parent. Were there times with your children that you didn't do something to them, but you allowed something to happen to them that you knew was not going to be fun, that you knew was going to be painful and hurtful and destroy your child's emotions and like, but you knew they needed it? There's a difference between doing it and saying, okay, you asked for it. But first, just to reiterate, it is okay to lament. Before we get into the lessons of Lamentations, I want to. You read Lamentations, and it's not one of those books that are in the top 10 preacher hit parade, right? You know, you will never hear Joel Osteen doing a Lamentations sermon, okay? But it's there for a reason. God created us. The Bible is the user's manual, and He goes, I know you're going to feel this way. I want to reiterate to those of you who hurt, who at times despair, and you come to church and you think, I got to put on this face. I got to be happy. And how many times did we do that when we had young kids? And we are losing it. We've been yelling. We're trying to get all together, and then we pull in the church. How are you today? Hello, greeter. Yes, look at my family. We're just a godly, happy family. And when I've greeted and I was looking at that face, sometimes I just look him straight in the eye and I'm like, it was a bad morning, wasn't it? Because you know. Okay. It's just like the last time you went to somebody's place for a party. And you know how this game goes on. You go to the door, it opens the door, you walk in, your wife immediately says to her wife, oh, your place looks so beautiful. Just going to the other wife, goes, well, thank you, blah, 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 acting like this is, we all keep it this way every day. And I just walk up to the husband, I'm going, how late were you up last night? And he's like, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, where's your junk room? Second door on the left. Do not open that door. Because we all know that. We're all scraping everything in there just so we can look good and make everybody think that this is just Pinterest or whatever y'all put this stuff on. I don't know. And it's going, none of us believe you live this way every day, but yet we play these games. And Lamentations is there to tell us it's okay to feel bad. Okay? And you got to process it. But if you don't process it correctly, it will squirt out somewhere else. It's like whack-a-mole. Okay? All strong emotions have to be dealt with. There's healthy ways and unhealthy ways. And by all strong emotions, I mean despair. I mean sexual desire and the like. I want to give an example. Think about in the church, many religious groups, we just don't address the issue of sexual desire in a positive way. And basically people just try and squash it down. And you know what happens? Well, let me just show you what happens because you've been around long enough to do it. Currently in Dallas, there's a minister who just stepped down because of sexual improprieties. And we've all been alive long enough to go, let's go back to the 80s and the PTL club and all this stuff. And if you don't address these things, they will pop up somewhere else in a bad way. So how do you address your despair? How do you address your lament in a positive way, in a way that's appropriate? I have this poster in my shop, along with lots of other good manly posters. Okay? I won't read the bottom of this, but it says, yeah, some men talk about their feelings, but others build steel reinforced concrete walls around them. And it's like, that's right. I'm a man, and I'm never going to show weakness. And let me be up front right up here. as men, are we supposed to be strong? Absolutely. And women, I hate to tell you this, but you say, I want a man who's open with his feelings. Really? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. The burglar alarm has just gone off. You shake your husband out of bed and say, go down and check that. Do you want your husband to go, I'm not too sure about this. I have some mixed emotions about this. I'm feeling some trepidation and some fear, and I'd like you to give me some time to process my feelings because I have the right to my feelings. All this touchy-feely stuff that we get in all this stuff, is that what you women are looking for? No. You're like, you go down there and put your life on the line to protect me and the kids while I call the police, okay? And I don't want any doubt. I don't want any hesitation. Get down there and do that, okay? So please. Now, on the flip side, gentlemen, if all we do is bottle it up, it is going to blow up. I had a former PhD student of mine call me yesterday. They were just like, I got to just talk to somebody. I said, what's going on? I said, I'm working with somebody at work, and they're coming on to me, and I'm really attracted to them, and blah, and I'm like, if I remember right, your kids are like 8 and 3, right? Yeah. You've been married about 11 years. Yeah. I said, you're right on schedule. I'm like, what? I said, you're right on schedule, dude. Okay? And going through this, and I said, first, it's okay. You are not the first to feel this way. You will not be the last to feel this way. Secondly, you got to address this straight on. You got to talk to your spouse. You need to get to marriage counselor. You got to deal with it. Okay? I didn't do anything for them. I just pointed them what they needed to do. But the point was, they talked to somebody. Because none of us are perfect. But on the flip side, we do this thing in society where American culture, we do not do balance. We just go from one extreme to another. And all of us know, back in the 70s and 80s, you just did not talk about mental illness. Okay? And that wasn't good. Right? And so we've gotten more open with it, and that's good too. But now we've reached a stage, especially with young people in junior high and high school, unless you're talking to somebody and you say, well, I've got these multiple psychiatric disorders. It's like you're not normal. Because somebody asks, how are you doing today? Perfectly fine. So, to illustrate this from the greatest rock group of all time, Rush. They put it very well. Oh, and by the way, I use this as an example as well, that there's a reason when you've ever felt really bad and you're lamenting or you're angry or you're hurt, do you go to Christian songs? No. Because there's time in your lives when you're so upset and like, if you hear another praise song, you're going to kill somebody. Okay? You want to scream. You want to rage. Well, there's groups out there that will give you songs and lyrics that are going to fit your feelings. Okay? Because to be perfectly blunt, rage songs don't sell in Christian music genres. Right? Okay? Now, I'm not saying you just listen to anything that's out there, or anything, but I'm just saying there's a reason sometimes us, our children, listen to secular songs because those people are putting it the way they actually feel that particular moment. Right? So, the right way, balance, grasshopper. And again, I say this in class because you'll know who I'm talking about in terms of Kung Fu. I say this in my undergraduate classes, and they're like, what are you talking about? These undergrads I took, I'm talking to some of them, and I made a Star Trek quote, and they just looked at me, and I'm like, you have seen Star Trek, haven't you? Like, no. Star Wars? No. I'm going, oh. Where have we gone wrong in our education system? So, anyway, I hold you K through 12 educators responsible. On those days at the end of the year when you're blowing it off and bringing in movies, I don't know what movies you're bringing in, but you're not bringing in the right ones. You should be bringing in Star Trek and Star Wars. I don't know. Okay. Here's what goes on through Lamentations into the center of Lamentations. All right, so let me back up a minute. Lamentations is classical Jewish literature. It's what's called chiism or chiism. And what is that? The Greek letter chi, an X. So the platform formerly known as Twitter. Okay? And what it is that it's just a mirror thing. In Jewish literature, you will have these statements that are mirrored on the way. It builds down to the central theme of the book, which is right in the middle, and then it repeats itself on the way out in a slightly different way. Okay, that's what chiasm is. Chiasm, all right? You can see it all the time in all sorts of literature. Okay, you can ask Mike. He took classes on this stuff. All right? So, here's what it builds up. It says, I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I will remember them. I will remember them, and my soul is downcast with me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. So notice, first thing is, don't ignore it. I just won't think about it. Maybe it'll go away. I'll just shove it down. Yeah, that doesn't work. Okay? I will remember this. I'll taste deeply the bitterness and the gall and the feeling. But I will call this to mind and have hope. What? What can give you hope? We're in the middle of this. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. Notice, it doesn't say because of the Lord's great love, we have no problems at all. It says we are not consumed. We're still burning, but we're not consumed. For his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And I will say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those who hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man to bear the yoke while he is young. We have, this is just my opinion. This is not, I am not inspired. We have an epidemic of anxiety and depression amongst our young people in this generation. And I would argue that part of that is because parents made it too easy for their kids. This verse says, you better deal with it when you're young. I ended up in the hospital my sophomore year of college because I was stupid and was taking 18 hours of honors courses and working 3 jobs and thought I only need 3 hours sleep a night. It's hard to believe, but I was in great shape back then. I was a wrestler and a long-distance runner. And I did that for 2 years until I collapsed and ended up in the hospital. And by the time I got out, it was past drop date. I had to repeat every class. I failed everything. And I felt like a failure because if you haven't noticed in time we've known each other, I'm type A. Okay? Yeah. And my 3 best friends graduated top 3 in our engineering class. I did not graduate 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th. Okay? And I felt like a failure, and I'm like, the world is over, and all this stuff. On the day I was hooded for my PhD, my dad told me that one of the professors I had in my honors calculus class at that time, who I'd had for several classes, and Dad, they'd gotten to be friends because he'd sold her car. He told me, Dr. Briggs said if anybody got their PhD, it would be you. I'm like, me? Doug went to MIT. Brooks was a National Merit Scholar. Kurt was the state math champion. And he said, yep. And she said she'd seen them all like that before because they'd never been knocked down and had to get up. And you got knocked down totally and had to figure out a way to get up. And he said, if anybody got it, it would be you. And I said, all these times I've been struggling, why didn't you tell me that? And he smiled and he said, she made me promise not to tell you until the day you were hooded. It is good to deal with stuff when you're younger. It ain't easy. My oldest daughter graduated top of her class, planning to go into medical school, and then her last year of college, an idiot gentleman who was texting instead of driving went through an intersection and took out 5 cars. And my daughter got a severe concussion. And from that, she developed narcolepsy. And we have not been able to get it under control. And even though she blew away the MCATs, she had decided, I can't go to medical school because I can't stay up 12 hours at a stretch. And I hurt for my daughter. And would I take it away from her if I could? Yeah, but I told her the same thing. Better to deal with it now when you're young. Because let me tell you, it doesn't get easier as you go along. And so first is, it's okay to just sit here and and just drink it in, to think on it. I didn't say dwell on it forever, but just face it. In the midst of all this Lent, the tone changes. It's good for a man to sit here in the space. What? For 2 chapters, you've been telling me how horrific this stuff is. People having to resort to cannibalism and all this, and now you're saying, wait, what is this? What's going on? Let him sit alone in silence. For the Lord has laid it on him. Let him bury his face in the dust. There may yet be hope, and let him offer his cheek to the one who would strike him, and let him be filled with disgrace. Let him sit alone in silence. Let him bury his face in the dust. Really? Well, if you go back and look at Job, that's what he did. He just took it for a while. Why is that? I am no psych. There's counselors in this room, and they can speak to this better than I am. I'm speaking this purely from personal and from what I know from other people. If you just respond to heavy emotions with the first thing that comes to your mind, you usually get it wrong. You got to sit on it for a while. You got to sit there, what's going on? Just give time to process it all. So you need to give yourself some time, and that isn't fun. But no one is cast off by the Lord. This is the middle of the keyism. This is the middle of the book. This is the key that everything's trying to get to. Though he brings grief, the Lord will show compassion. So great is his unfailing love. For he does not willingly bring affliction or grief to anyone. To crush underfoot all prisoners in the land, to deny people their rights before the Most High, to deprive them of justice. Would not the Lord see such things? What he's saying is, you as a nation did this. There's repercussions to your actions. But God is still merciful. That's the center of the whole book. We will be punished. Actions have consequences. But God is still there for us. And God can still bring us out of it. And it's okay to mourn. Who can speak and have it happen if the Lord has not decreed it? Is it not from the mouth of the Most High that both calamities and good things come? Why should the living complain when punished for their sins? Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. Are all bad things that happen to you due to your sin? No. That's also in the book of Job. Are some of the things that happen to us due to our sin? Yes. And do most of the time we want to ignore that? Yep. For those of you watching, it's talking about that in prison is a verse they use, the Lord those who the Lord loves, he disciplines, etc. That's right. I've got a good friend who I'm amazed at how well he succeeded given everything that he's been through. But when he was in prison and I visited him there, he told me, he said, I'm the only one in here who's guilty. Everybody else in here will tell you in a minute, when I tell people I'm guilty, they look at me and they're like, what's wrong with you? He said, but I'm the only one in this entire penitentiary who will tell you I'm guilty. But that's what this verse is also getting into. Sometimes the pain is because of what we've done. And if we don't accept that and repent it, well, don't be surprised when things keep going. Okay? So this brings us to 5 key lessons from Lamentations. Lamentations 1. How lonely sits the city that was full of people. How like a widow she has become. She who is great among the nations, she who is a princess among the provinces, has become a slave. She weeps bitterly in the night with tears on her cheeks among all her lovers. She has none to comfort her, and all her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies. In Leviticus, we read these words. But if in spite of this you will not listen to me, but walk contrary to me, I will scatter you among the nations. I will unsheath the sword after you. Your land will be a desolation. Your cities will be but waste. Deuteronomy 28 lays this out in detail. Now, I'm not going to ask how many of you have also watched that great set of movies or even better books, The Lord of the Rings. Okay? But the hobbits lived in a land, and they just liked to take things easy, and they didn't know about the big bad world and all this stuff, and everything was great. What they didn't know is they were being protected by this whole group of people called the Rangers, and without them, they had had war and destruction and everything else. So again, when this verse says, God says, you don't do this, this is what will happen. I will unsheath the sword. It's not like God's going to have to slay him. He said, I just have to remove my protection from you. And all this crashes in. Okay? We sit here safe today because less than 1% of the United States population is willing to take the oath and put on a uniform, and the military is all around the world protecting us. And if that doesn't happen, then what happens? Oh, well, things get simpler. Go to Ukraine. They're not having any discussion about social programs and how much to spend on education and all this stuff. No. Those discussions aren't happening on a daily basis. Those discussions are, how do we survive? So we're here because less than 1% of the U.S. population is out there defending us. Okay? But Deuteronomy says this: if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all my commandments that I command you today, the Lord will set you high above all the nations on the earth. And all the blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city. Blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall the fruit of your womb and the fruit of the ground and the fruit of your cattle increase your herds and the young of your flock. Blessed shall you be your basket and your kneading bowl. And blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. The Lord will cause your enemies who rise against you to be defeated before you. They shall come out against you one way and flee in 7 different ways. The Lord will command your blessing on you in your barns and in all you undertake, and he will bless you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. The Lord will establish as a people holy to himself, as he has sworn to you, if you keep the commandments of the Lord and walk in his way. And it just keeps going for another 10 verses. Here's all the blessings. But then verse 14, but if you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God, and you are not careful to keep my commandments and my statutes, then I command you today that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city. Cursed shall you be in the field. Cursed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Cursed will be the fruit of your womb and the fruit of the ground and the increase of your herds. Cursed shall you be when you go in and when you go out. The Lord will send you curses, confusion, frustration, until you are destroyed and perish quickly on account of the evil of your own deeds. Notice, not because I'm mean and vindictive, but because of the evil of your own deeds, because you have forsaken me. The Lord will make the pestilence stick. The Lord will strike you with wasting disease and fever, and it goes on for another 30 verses. And it literally does say at one point, your mothers will eat their children. God's saying, I'm not going to do this to you. But I've told you before about the Assyrian nation and what they would do to people. And when they're feeling merciful, they would take the young women with children, tie the babies around their necks so they couldn't be removed, kill the babies, and drive the women away, because they'd killed everybody else. And drive the women away so they would go to surrounding villages to talk about, this is what happens when you go against the Assyrians. And you're a woman that's been driven away and there's nowhere out there, and you're in the desert and you have nothing to eat. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ruin your day, but this was the realities. And God said, it's not like I want to do this to you, but if you disobey me and I remove my protections, it will not be good. And all this is saying, you abandoned God, you served idols. And that leaves you the second thing. Disobedience leads to desolation. God promises people great blessing, as we just pointed out, but when disobedient, then there is a problem. And by the way, this is illustrated by most Disney princess movies. You're going, what just happened? He went from Lamentations to princess movies. We had some friends over, and they had some younger children, and my girls were talking to them, and my daughter, Lisa, just looks at them and says, and Dad, what is the best Disney movie? And I'm like, Beauty and the Beast. And why? And this came up from when they were younger, and we were debating this at a table. Macaroni Grill, remember when Macaroni Grill used to be up there by Walmart? with some other people. Let me lay this out to you. Ariel, why did Ariel get in trouble? Because her father told her, don't go up to the land. And she did it anyway. And then she sold her soul. She could have legs because she loves him. She loves him. And so dad nearly gets killed, all this stuff, but it's Disney, so we wrap it all, and she finds true love, and they live happily ever after. Yeah. In reality, ladies, the bad boys don't change. Okay? They got you by being bad. Why should they change? Okay? I'm not even going to Snow White and living with 7 men. I just don't go. Okay? But I always point out, Beauty and the Beast, what? She's studious. She likes to read. She doesn't fall for the dumb jock. She listens to her father, and she's willing to sacrifice herself for her father when he was in prison. And she chooses the guy who looks bad but has good character. There we go. I told my girls, this is the only Disney princess movie you should be watching. All the rest of these, I don't know. Okay? But literally, stop and think about it. That's exactly what the princess movies do. Don't listen to your dad, get in trouble, but that's okay. We'll bail you out because true love wins. Right. Yeah, that's about as smart as telling 18-year-olds when they're graduating high school, follow your passion. Right, because 18-year-olds, their passions don't change 2 days after they just did this when they know this is what I want to do with my life. Oh, look. We need correction. Your prophets have seen for you false and deceptive visions. They have not exposed your iniquity to restore your fortunes, but have seen for you oracles that are false and misleading. Sometimes we need people to tell it like it is. To look us straight in the eye and say, you are wrong. And again, you won't get this from the prosperity preachers, because that's not what's bringing in money. But the simple reality is we need people we trust that will tell us, what are you doing? Don't you see where this is going? Snap out of it, dude. We need that. But there's also a way back, no matter how far the wrong path we've gone down. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. Now I know what I'm about to read, if none of you have ever read or studied Lamentations, you're like, wait a minute, I've heard that before. Okay? So the entire book of Lamentation is awe, and yet this is what we sing as a praise song all the time. And why is it such a good praise song? Because it comes from the depths of despair. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul, and therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. There's no argument we can make that can win us back to God, because God is perfect and we are not. But because God is perfect, he is always merciful. And the simple reality is, all our adult lives, as we look back, we find and realize things. We never grow unless there's pain. When your kids were small, they're coming in, I hurt, my bones are aching, my muscles are aching. What do we say? Okay, here, take something. Why? Because what were they experiencing? Growing pains. The bones were growing, the body's growing. You cannot grow without pain. That's how the world works. If you played sports, did you ever improve after you won the championship? No. You're like, woohoo, let's go celebrate. But when you got your head handed to you on a platter and embarrassed in front of the home crowd, you're like, oh, what do we need to change? What do we got to do? And God is our only hope. He is sovereign. He is master of the universe. And he is there with us. But you, O Lord, reign forever. Your throne endures to all generations. Why do you forget forever? Why do you forsake us for so many days? Restore us to yourself, O Lord, that we may be restored. Renew our days as of old, unless you have utterly rejected us and you remain exceedingly angry with us. That was their prayer, because by the end of Lamentations, they had realized this is happening for a reason and it's our fault. And And when you accept that, you accept punishment as well. That's also a part of being an adult. David, when his first son was ill, fasted and prayed and wept. And when his son died, his advisors were afraid to tell him. But as soon as he said, that's okay. I'll go to see him, but he will not stay with me, because he accepted God's punishment. He accepted he had done wrong and he deserved to be punished. And we need to accept that too at times. Oops. Well, I was also going to stop this with one song from Linkin Park. But see, I try and keep y'all up to date on some of the latest. It's just saying, I can't take it anymore. And so all I'd tell you this week is, if you're facing something and you said, I just can't take it anymore, that's okay. God knows it. It's okay to lament. It's okay to turn to other people and say, I don't know what to do. You're not a bad Christian. You're not a bad anything. You're just human. Okay? And we go through this. So, if you are facing something this week, I hope it doesn't go all week. But even if it does, even if what you're facing does cause you to lament for a long period of time, turn to your brothers and sisters here. That's what we're here for as well. When Gretchen and I went through infertility, we lost 2 babies. And the first time we lost one, of course, Gretchen's upset and inconsolable. And I said, well, we just need to tell people at church. And she was like, what? No. I'm so embarrassed. I don't want to tell them I lost a baby. And I'm like, no, tell them. And guess what? Women came out of the woodwork saying, yeah, I lost a child too. Facing your lament alone isn't what the church was developed for. We were developed to share our burdens together. So whatever it is, share. It's okay. That's what we're here for. All right? So, is that the first or second bell? But I hear people going by. That was the second. Okay. So, I've kept you long again, but that's all right. Have a good one. We'll talk to you later.